Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in Freshman English. We are now on our MyPerspectives volume, and we have a real treat for ourselves. We're working now with Gareth Hines, a graphic novel of the Odyssey. I'm with you on page 624, 625 and following. Let's meet Gareth Hines really quickly. He was born in 1971. He grew up in Vermont as a self-described nerdy kid who drew a lot and was fascinated by mixed martial arts. After graduating from the Parsons School of Design in New York, Hines began working on video games before turning his attention to writing and illustrating graphic novels, including Beowulf, King Lear, The Merchant of Venice, and Romeo and Juliet. He's the recipient of the Boston Public Library's Literary Lights for Children Award. And I'm hoping that your exposure to this graphic novel will lead you to all of the graphic novel of the Odyssey, as well as some other titles that Gareth Hines has made. Now, the background information here on 625, necromancy, or communication with the dead, appears in ancient myths as a way to see into the future or to learn how to fulfill a challenging task. In this excerpt, Odysseus has followed the witch goddess Circe's advice and has traveled to the western edge of the world to summon the spirit of the old prophet Tiresias in order to ask him how he can return home to Ithaca. Let's go through the different frames of this real quickly, and I'll try and help you to just give you a point of reference. In the very first frame, just spread your sail, Circe told me, and the north wind will carry you directly to the black shore. In the second frame, beach your ship and go inland, looking for the lake where the river of fire and the river of tears meet. That is to say, Hades. We're headed down to Hades. In the third frame, dig a trench there on the shore of 4 men's length on each side and sacrifice a black lamb and a young goat. And then up at the top of 627, the fourth frame, the spirits of the dead will soon appear, drawn by the smell of blood. Have your men quickly burn the carcass in sacrifice to the 12 gods, while you draw your sword and stand over the trench. You may see spirits you know, but let none touch the blood until Tiresias appears. Question him about your journey, and he will tell you everything. In frame 5, Odysseus is shocked. Elpenor, how did you get here? You were with us yesterday. This is, of course, we've given full lectures on this already, but this is one of those fascinating moments when Odysseus is comes to this realization that one of his pals is dead and didn't make the journey, telling you that Odysseus was very, very focused on this trip to Hades. He didn't have maybe time to take into consideration all of his men. The response from Elpenor is famous. He says, "Captain, it was my ill luck that brought me here more swiftly than your black ship. I had drunk," and now the sixth frame, "I had drunk too much and gone to sleep on Circe's roof in the fresh night air. I was roused by the sounds of the men marching out to the ship, but in my confusion, I missed the ladder and fell headlong, snapping my neck." So in other words, he drank too much, he got drunk, woke up in the morning, hungover, and he fell off the roof, snapped his neck, and is dead. "Captain, I know you must go back that way again, and I pray you, by the love you bear me and the long years we served together, burn my body, raise a monument of stones for me, and plant atop it the long oar I pulled in life." Now, I've given full lectures on this at learnstrong.net, but this is significant. The request is significant. In other words, I need to be buried properly, and we know from our study of both the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid that all of this really matters. To show proper respect to the gods, one must have a proper burial. Frame 7 on 628. "I promised him, and his spirit faded back into the darkness, but then came another shade I knew too well. Altisina, my beloved mother, who had still lived when I sailed for Troy." So in other words, he sees his mother for the first time. "The sight broke my heart, but I kept my sword out, and she held back from it, until finally I saw the man I sought, Tiresias." So he doesn't even allow his own mother to drink. In other words, what are we saying about Odysseus? Very driven, very focused. He knows he's got to get information, and he's going to get that information no matter what. We then, in frames 8 and 9 and 10, will have Tiresias' ghost who will then come. Of course, Tiresias, as we've said in other lectures, is so fascinating. He's lived both the life of a man and a woman and can remember them. Remember, the Greeks believed in reincarnation. Tiresias can see both the past as well as the future, and most interestingly, Tiresias is blind, yes? So here he is now to have his conversation. "So," he says in frame 11, "Great Odysseus, you come to me," frame 12, "for prophecy and advice. You want to know how you can return home to your beloved island of Ithaca? Yes, great sage, Odysseus responds. Tell me what you see. How can I complete the journey? Now it will be Tiresias and the large frame, the last frame of 13. You can only reach your home by disciplining yourself and your men. I would circle the word disciplining, right? Heed my words. You must not touch the cattle of Helios, the sun god, who sees all. If you leave those sacred beasts unharmed, your ship and all your crew will reach Ithaca safely. But if you allow your men to kill any of Helios' cattle, then your ship and crew will be destroyed, and you will suffer more long years at sea. You'll return at last, but under a strange sail, unrecognized at home, and your palace overrun by enemies, suitors who seek to eat up your flocks and claim your wife. Of course, we know, because we know how the Odyssey ends, right? We know that this is in fact exactly what happens. But to finish the instructions, once you've killed these men, whether in open combat or by stealth, and put your house in order, you must take your oar with you and travel inland until you reach a country where men know nothing of ships or the sea. You will know you've reached the place when a stranger asks you what is on your shoulder and thinks it's a flail or some tool for threshing grain. There, you must plant your oar and make a rich sacrifice to Lord Poseidon, a ram, a bull, a breeding boar, asking his forgiveness for putting out the eye of his son Polyphemus. Then return home and make rich sacrifices to all the gods in turn. If you do this, then death will come upon you peacefully in old age with your loved ones around you. Now, one of the more fascinating things, as we've said in another lecture about this, is that Odysseus and his death narrative, as we sometimes refer to it, the way that he dies in mythology, we never know. The Greeks never told the death narrative story of Odysseus. This suggests that if Odysseus returns to Ithaca and takes his oar and walks far enough inland, takes another journey, in other words, and plants the oar, that in fact he will then be able to live out a happy, peaceful life. It will be later the great poet Tennyson, who will in fact, the name of the poem is Ulysses, the Latin name of Odysseus, who imagines that Odysseus is never going to live a peaceful life. No, not for Odysseus. He is a man of adventure, and so Tennyson, we have a full lecture on this at learnstrong.net. You'll study this with me when you're a senior. I'm just setting it up for you now. Tennyson imagines an Odysseus that says, I cannot rest from travels. I will drink life to the lees, he will say. Finally, come my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. These lines, of course, are famous lines in 303. They even end up on our learnstrong.net homepage for those of you that are like, where have I seen those lines before? That is why. Well, there you go, an introduction to the graphic novel. I hope that this introduction will lead you to more of the amazing work of Hines. Thank you.